So far hotel anase esoma udoma hotel ebenya de akwakodi ho anase edin ene wo nanso eni ho ehye nipa da sani ebetu akwiem ene onyankropon akwatena democracy eyema bibifo anase enyema yen kwasi broni trim popa ene senti a wode vaccination eba abibiman mu na family plan so mpo no ehye ban ana kwasi broni hye ye ewo krom enti a wode etoa yen eba ne sen ana gay ati atese ewo wiase afana nyinara ene we se illuminati ene we se freemason ene we se sumwe mu ni nyinara ahyase firi he no broni Timpo our design ma we nyara e ba no de ato abibima mu no ene sen we entram so hwe Wake Up Africa kwasiada we ni kwasiada bia awia dumienu ekopem awia no mienu live on Royal TV eye adwuma dia ofa poku danko ye executive director edema Free the Mind movement ene ofa Israel Nkroma eye coordinator edema Free the Mind movement no
ebeka me Kofi Kumi ho
na yesim konwa na madi dwuma dia wo chiame na ensem bia tise no ye gina twe kronkron so abakosem ene ntwere ahodo so na dia mo hu ba bia obibini ufiri enu mu a edro ene soma wosombo na mabrofo sisi a che ebra so se call together trend kaye no etumi bam ne no ana hyase o Free the Mind movement dwumadi e friend say Wake Up Africa dwumadi so praso say ye fa dwumadi live on Royal TV so kwasiada we ni kwasiada bia awia dumienu kopim no mienu na ya jo so adwenche na wasemmisa ye ano e dia ma Wake Up Africa abibiman moma yen sore
one business general Abatown Niko multimedia so pay video editing, photo shoot, photo editing, documentary, business advert, music video, funeral program, birthday parties, onya uni haukra. Esan say Niko multimedia ebeye nina. Nesu yenwiyo so we your wedding papa bi Niko multimedia si enha ho kra o me cover ni nyina ma. So we are sorry anaso say we edwumakuo bi a opesa u streaming live u program aye social media handles na aye Twitter, Facebook and the keka ho na Niko multimedia si woni how esan so mo ye ni nyina live abra program na ekoso Niko multimedia si omotonton gadget aye media gadget papa ebine aye audio and video equipment, cameras, speakers, microphones, mixers ni nyina Niko multimedia aye ho adwuma Niko multimedia ewo Koforidia eho ana motare betimi afrend Niko multimedia ewo 0244 549107 aye Niko multimedia the media general ewo town. Thank you.
Amuna oba ye krum se oba betray yamesu eche no toni ba eche no dia sase akwanu mana dia sanyo akwanu mana dia sanyo akwanu mana dia sanyo
ya premo ato na premo to a na oni se ayadwumadi ya to ni din se Wake Up Africa Royal Television so Osonfo Kofi Kumi atenase na remoto na medima gwase ya mene empanyifo mienu bi na ya yesinkonwa na dwumadi ye de asomo eye wofa ya opoku dankwa a oye executive director edema eku FN Free the Mind movement one ne ba Israel Nkroma a ono so ye national coordinator edema eku FN Free the Mind movement sa empanyifo yi na kwase de bia na premoto se ya yesinkonwa de dwumadi asomo ena me no kasa yi de eye opanyi ofa ya opoku dankwa ono na dwumadie na de mene ne ba bedi isan se ne ba Israel Nkroma dwumadie bi atwena kwa kopie ba bi foforo anu nti no Israel ba bi awo bi anu ye tiawo ha anu nti na gese ne no eye ofa ya opoku dankwa nkwa ene na dwumadie ye de eba besomo na eye na wotwe ene ne ye tena ase no ofa ede ye wura mu a ono ne o kire kan ene se eye think tank groups ene lecturers professors omo universities omo kire school for ade ene ne o mo so na ne nyina ne efa eye economics ene yesikasem ne ho hyehye ne ho tutoye amamuo no sene a ye de toto ne sene ye hyehye na anka be yi amane manfo no ofa de ye wura mu sikasem na no na ofa ekobo sikakuo batan ekuo kese a ewiase obonidin a na kire se obia no hwehwe babi a ewo ofa kire ye ema ehu kwan ye nam so a saa dwumakuo no eba asase yi so eye esikafo bi a omobo mutirimu po eye owura oye Rothschild na ɔyɛ nsusuye yɛ nhyehyɛeɛ na ɛno nti ɔfa nipa bi sɛ monkɔtena ase na monkɔyɛ nhyehyɛeɛ a yɛbɛtumi ɛde sika control nipa na ɛno ɛnenam so a ɛbɛwo saa dwumakuo na saa dwumakuo no nso so bɛwo ne nkorabata IMF ɛne ne keka ho ɛne empo ɛyɛ IRS ɛyɛ ɔmo gyegye sika na ɛnɛ Ghana babia afa babia oyɛ adwuma ne yɛ taxe wo fa ha ne yɛ taxe wo no ɔfa kyerɛ mu die nti a ɛne trimopo ɛnam so a ɛma saa dwumadie ni nyinaa no ɛnɛ Africa yɛnso abepiem ɛhyɛ ase wɔ America man mu esan sɛ na mo pɛsɛ ɔmo de control America for de America man ni nyinaa ɛyɛ nkoa na no na America president a no wɔ hɔ no ɔmo nam ne so fa kwasi kwan so ma ɔde bill ɛpaase ya ɔmo de fa ɔse ɔfa kyerɛ mu ana kɛsɛ Xmas bi Christmas adu a ama dodoɔ na no ɛni agye ɔmo yɛ Mary no ɔmo amba parliament no ɛno push it through ma ɛnam so ma saa dwumadie ni nyinaa bɛgyina yɛ nɛ Central Bank bi a wɔ wiase te sɛ ɛba Ghana Commercial Bank ɛyɛ saa group yi saa nkrɔfo yi ɛyɛ nipa kuo bi ɛna control na ne nyinaa no ɛyɛ nhyehyɛeɛ bi a ɔmo de gu kwan mu a nhyehyɛeɛ ne sɛ yɛka sika na ɔfa kyerɛ sɛ 3% fama yehu yɛ last week sɛ sika nankasa 3% pɛ ɛne nea yehu sɛ yɛkurakura no ne aka ne nyinaa ne deɛ ɛyɛ figures a yɛbobɔ na ne nam mframam na gɛsɛ ɔfama yehu sɛ sika no ɛyɛ kwati kwan a nipa bi afa so a ɔmo de dada wiase akyekyere wiase ɛde yɛ nyinaa kɔhyɛ cage mu a ɛna obiara sɛ ɔpɛ bi ɛno nti ɔma pɛ kwan ɛde yɛ nyinaa hyɛ cage mu ɔfa bie we nyinaa so ɛma we nyinaa bɛda adi ma yehu ɛno nti na ɔfa ɛma yehu sɛ ɛyɛ yɛ school pon mu lectures professors a ɔmo sɛ ɔmo kyerɛ economics ɔmo kyerɛ amamuo na ɔmo asua ade abɔ biwa anka ɔmo na hɛsɛ nneɛma bi ahinta ɔmo da na di ma yehu no ne nyinaa no ɔfa ma yehu sɛ over the bar ɔmo nyinaa bɔ over the bar ɛna ɔmo bɛgyina na nneɛma ɔmo kyerɛkyerɛ no asɛ ɔmo nimde nanso ɔfa bie ma yehu sɛ ɛyɛ anokwasɛm ɛyɛ mpanyifoɔ no ɛyɛ sɛ ɔmo san kɔ ɔmo ntibiem na ɔmo san kɔ revise na afei ɔmo san kɔ adesua mu yie na ɔmo de ne korɛ ɛbrɛ yɛn sɛ ɛbɛyɛ a amammuo ne nhyehyɛeɛ a ɛne sikasɛm ntotoyɛ ne a yehu ama ɛno nti ɔman bi ɛbrɛ ɛwɔ wiase mu no Ghana ha etitiriwo sɛ me Ghana ni ba nti me meka Ghana asɛm ama Ghana yɛtumi afa yɛn ntoma pɛfra wɔ sikasɛm ho ɛne yɛn nhyehyɛeɛ ɛfa amammuo ho no na enipa ɛbrɛ no ɔmatumi agyina yie yo sabri ebia na unifie na nso dwumadie wo pɛsɛ wo ka ho ane abɛfo ntentan so ukɔso na hwehwɛ Wake Up Africa GH ɛyɛ Facebook ɛna YouTube a dwumadie wobɛtumi aka ho live na nso wahwɛ bi saa nso ɛna matena si wo SMS ɛna WhatsApp message fabrɛ me na ode ba ko a mekenkan ɛde ama wo number adbɛfa so ɛde ama me no ɛyɛ 0206 519335 0206 519335 maka ne saa no mekɔ ɔfa hɔ na afei madana di na dwumadie no yɛde ahyɛ so over
Kofi
mpacho mo akɔ aba
ejo so
yidi sɛ bibia ɛbɔkɔ yɛda ɔba ade ase sɛ busua ayɛ ne ɔmo di dwuma no sabri ɔmayɛ krado kwɛsɛ dadu na premo to say ya na Wake Up Africa dwumadie so wɔ Royal Television so deɛ aha ɔmo gi nyansa fa nyansa tase nyansa ɛpɛ nyansa nya nyansa nti na ɔmo fa dwumadie ni ni agoro nti medan dwumadie ni ndama ɔmo da ase
yo Kofi mdase
yo
na edi kan yɛbɛkye ahwɛfoɔ nyinaa
ahwɛfoɔ agye so
na ansana mefiri dwumadie asɛm sɛ last week phone no ba no obi kan sɛ yɛn ansa obusa question a yɛn ma no ansa na mintimi hu question kora obisa yɛ a yɛn ma ansa na ɔka no wie no ɔka sɛ ana ɔbade ɔtan abrɔfo nti ana na ɔde yɛn kɔhyɛ wɔn nsa na ɛba saa ɛno na mpɛ sɛ yi a ɛna obi no nso kan sɛ ana ɛde bɛnti na nnome na bae so ana
Yensanko nananom ye nananom de na minhu adekura opeso ochire
say yensan ase ono peso ochire say ye nananom abosom ye nananom yesi yenkonko fa ye tete abrabo no ye tete abrabo no hu ni say ye tete abrabo na ye ka no ye abosomade ya tetefo no na mihu abosomade ye ko a aya amanfo say ofa ye kristosom ye ko kristosom no ya brabo ye bo nyina no impo ye duane die bi wo hokra na ye nuane se ne ye di no se ne a obehu abusua betonsa ne o matena se didi aye no kra na ye hu ni say abosomsomade yo ofa ya mamrade ye bebre na no anke ka ye bom ti se festivals bi wo ha eye yam festivals a ukọ achima mu a ohum bayire edua ne ye di na ye dia welcome bayire ne ade na ye di sa ne mani nyina no na edu sabre na wo ba bia achini ba bia no se wo ba achim na obedi na ke se busua timi ehu om ho enuanom ayira na omo fi se sa de mani nyina ya bosomade ye enti na no na ye ka omo kire se ya bosomade ye yes
enti no maybe 3 minutes
okay
ebe jiwe no nyina no
okay
na the entire ye previous episodes no ye jawo YouTube no any say wa TV a wonso wani di program na chi no in your spare time ko say that room maya ko YouTube ko to data na hwe earlier ones no bi ananka question bi a bebisa na yi anu dada na je what you say na fi what me amba say why up to date with the air can and you ba be tomu a kwani na so ja no na say question bi a yi anu dada afi na ba bebisa na teza wo twen nyina kwatire ne tintin ni tietie nyina ne se no me fa ma ye ho so no ye di kan kinkan scriptures say de obo ade ne mra etu anamo a enhira ne bedi yeso de mo me dan ye chi ma mra no a no me ene beba yeso ye dan ye chi ma e mo no so kan se wo de ebe hye enkofo bi mpo a wo mu om so mo ye enkofo o ma twa so eho na abrofu ibem na ye be free program yase no ye ma obi a ohwe bibia ehunu se broni enye obo ade ne board broni free bibini mu ene bae e bae mra na Gehazi house help we are Lord prophet Elisha and Aneti na o show greediness obi baji ayaresa ewo Elisha ho enti na ye normal say e basa anu a oso je o de achede bi ba o de ba no Elisha ni no so pa de na ayi ni nyina nti o de ko house boy no tifi o ti ka me man fa ni huni na okotwa no no je ni ema o de ba do de bi sie master friend wa anka no kure o so onko be bia no no so say de wayi yare no a owura ndi ba ya obaji yare sa do enti nsi wuso eni wasefo so afiko no oda ni ofri eti so oda na ofri na se ene no gba ade enso se ofri wa na mi Yusuf fatwe ma so a etambe ne wo
and you offer him history come from the Caucasian people
Caucasians
omo anka some history sa na omo from omo nim history no they are where abrofo no
enti eno no enti anya sa time bi no ba de tan wo mu na emu no wo a obo wo a odene mra ma o se disu ne fatu anamo no wadan wachi a hwan bi no obenya ndi aba betintin ye de ono wati adada enti no ekoba asa ana se ka se yen sanko ye chi a ye hwe history ye fi ba ne ba AD 70 a Roman soldiers be butubutu o Jerusalem ho ne etu anamo for about 1500 years e be ye wonders and e be pie Africa sabre no ye wura West Africa na Ghana Mali Songa empires and ba ye be kan Ghana empire no e okra na e be di ahini enti Mali empire be conquer old Ghana empire no and e sa to ya country so and e be pie free baby ene e nyina ye pie free ye be pie free ha ye tratra ha no ana afi de ekoba se akwasi kokko obeto aye no so di ni die ni nim die ni whatever so de betwe aso ene ya yira enti za oto na ka se yenko ya kina ase die nananom eya aye bia no ba bia obia firi no sabosum wo ho a ne e boda wuro se da se ye nyina yenko abusumfie ne yenko nko so mana
ndabi
enti se bibi se ni ho dia ada na za bia e be kan se bia yenko ya chi no eno ani mfoni a e bank of future ada ntia because akunede so late da ben na late kuro ni aboda wuro se e da we die obia mase mienko akunede ibi adu atisa obi be kokonfo ho a na obi a wo spiritual issue bi
no person
also kwa ko bi se kwa ko fi no ko ye consultation ankwankre na ne ko na de nim traditionally any say ye nananom kura no no wo mu do nipa kura chen bi
that was the lifestyle
kura si sabre na hotel any rest houses ni ho no na wunim da hoho be ba be bo pun ase o pe ba bi ada bi ade chi a o to ana kwantuo so enti edidi a ye horo kwanse mu ye jabi wa ase sani hoho bia ba obenya bibi kakredi na watu wa kwantuo eno ne de na nananom ye ene Christianity aba yenko prison yenko population yenko omo religion ni yenko say omo no me traditional ade we da ho enya me de ntime mfa omo dudo say na o prison dem omo ho nyina ye Christopher ni nkrambufo kire obibi sa kire obibi ente wo ya kan no say yenko ya chi wo ye Christo ni nti wo de enya wo a eniye na da ye bedru sa episode no ho no a ye kire say obaade ya ayebo ni ye saba no entade a ye bewura free ho no religion de ka ho ye bewuro ni nyina ansan de asaka obaade ani enti ye nhwe ni ye ye ka se ye nsan koye chi a enkasa Christianity de eyeso onu ko aye one of the biggest problems amma abibifo ntimi hu babia omde omani ekwa akofwe religion man made in free of ade ho enti se ka enu asem se yenko yachi nume no akante mu bebre because of religion ye de ho akwa affiliate I feel say ye so obade when ye ni bibia de so no mate enu afri ho na afi mi saba be kama sem afi ni saba enigmedi no last week ne come AC say Federal Reserve kwa eba so a eba ye ema o started ma ekabo eba eviase if sika o de ba ye eventually and e the dollar no ene be ye international reserve currency a eno ne adidi dwa ene ne ade transactions ene ade bibia enti o man bia o bezo hu sika ho den a ade ahwehwe o de atoto dollar ho ahwese ne ebesi aye eno no wo mu koji tu mu 1944 emra 730 delegates from 44 countries omkoshia wo New Hampshire Mount Washington Hotel wo mu yese wo mu kwa koji atum Anglo American omukwa approve the Bretton Woods system ya di ba be ji atum ndom de ye America fo wie ya omtimi je oman no kenten so ema ekabo ene be so America fo no echi ka kire IMF anywhere bank say mon fa sampa nko abi mon konko bo amaman bosia
dewro
na mo dewro keke wa wura wo mo kon ne hunu se wo mo so wo ma be share debt money system no a edi eka ena eba bam ne nipa nti ho na manu si ya me de eba be sa faso
okay
nti obu ma ya ti ase ese se ne esitie no mu bobisia no mu make sure se abayro be ma amai manu citizens no atua tax na tax no betua no enu no mdi ba betua interest ewo sika ye dia bo mu bisia so nti no ba be ye ene ke se wo mde ko ye nti Ghana example nam de be ma 1986 81 Chairman Rawlings ni revolution say have the ye ni adani ni emeni sabre no na IMF ni World Bank for nso be mu be kan say what the structural adjustment program aba and the first no was central income tax central we had a funny name and on besesa no tie ho no mo de IRS no e buy from the buy no be say free na ekono wan tua wo taxa de be ni say we adwadini a ye beba ni aba ba je o store ye betum ye bet de pese ye no bia no ye be enti yen ko graphic People's Daily graphic first picture
the first picture no People's Daily graphic 3rd July 1986 tax collection system of IRS to be
decentralized
Mfa sa picture no ento so mfa maye
da ube kan
okay
o de tusu wi a
okay
ma market ase
okay
de ma market ase na ube kan ye me market ase amen kan we
oh okay
we.
Okay okay so and that so no baby a offer amake no na ye kan ne wa make no nko na ye kan o say under the new arrangement tax collection assessment and the issuing of clearance certificate would be done at the district councils where new offices are soon to be opened. The other one, I say, Mr. Ahoy said, with the establishment of the IRS, which is now an autonomous body, a lot of good work is expected of it by way of revenue collection. Okay, yeah, but down now. I also say, I say a new legal identity to enable it to acquire, hold. I say a new legal identity to enable it to acquire, hold, manage or dispose of any movable property and may enter into such contracts and transactions as may be expedient. Okay. You back down now. I say Mr. Ahoy said it is envisaged that the new service would be more scientific and business oriented in its operations than had been the case previously.
Enti no, let's just say, woman ya tumi a ye betimi atu store, ye betimi asizi store. The person ye bia no, emra foforo no, emye kwan, emye. Yanko the next picture.
The next picture no, People's Daily Graphic, 2nd October 1986. IRS closes down shops of tax defaulters in Tema. Over sa picture no ento so maye.
Enti no tumi no omonya no. E na afi de. Omo kire.
Omo exhibit.
Na wa tua tax no a.
Ya to store
mo e betum. Etum so a wontumi mi afi. Next picture.
Daily Graphic, 18th March 2016. Tekpe justifies increases in taxes. Move sa picture no ento so maye. Okay. Oh my God. Okay. Yo. Ye kind
picture number.
Papa Machaba. Okay. Ye kind Daily Graphic, Friday, March 18th, 2016. Tekpe justifies increases in taxes. The Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, Mr. Seth Tekpe, has justified the increases in taxes, saying the country needs to mobilize enough revenue for development.
Enti no, the chairman enti say assortment of taxes. Ena ne deba. So Ghana ha aban bi ba so we a nuisance tax. E ye free ho Actually, Vinia also the Viviaba, now the also Bebano, New Sun starts to cry, and I am penny more. Nina and a mummy who no credit say. Bessiana Yacobo interest na Yetuano. I say it can only come when we collect enough revenue. Yet the aqua a canuso. Identity and a debia and perceive a beacon criteria. Next picture.
Next picture, no Daily Guide, 12 May 2016. IMF ends third review. OK's new tax laws. Move us a picture into some money. Okay, that's
next picture.
Next picture, no, BFT, 19th June 2018. 30% of government revenue goes to debt repayment. Over our picture, no, into some for my. I ask them more. Hey. Okay.
Next picture.
Next picture, no, Daily Graphic, 24th November 2021. Embrace tax measures. Finance Minister appeals to Ghanaians. Move us a picture no into Somalia.
Because revenue collection in there, a mandatory. I am a for now mandate to say, because you the interest in the quan and cost. Improve. I say it. Next picture.
Daily Graphic, 16th November 2021. Turning Ghanaians into lovers of taxes. Move us a picture no into Somalia. Hey, Azemo.
Na one more question, one more. A man, Yansu Babaji taxes. Book where I heard last week that the Vatican hold your mortgage. Next picture,
okay. Your next picture, no, does the Vatican hold your mortgage? And your question: the greatest story never told by William Thompson, part 11. William Thomas.
Okay.
Yo, near that one na yeah kind of. I say, in case you are wondering, the never properly ratified U.S. income tax was also introduced by busy banksters in 1913 as the only means to finance the wars that ensure perpetual profits from pyramiding public and corporate debt. The U.S. federal income tax is not federal either. Yo, well, according to attorney, author and federal witness Paul Andrew Mitchell, after much diligent research, several investigators have concluded that there is no known act of Congress nor any executive order giving IRS lawful jurisdiction to operate within any of the 50 states of the Union. When all the evidence is examined objectively, IRS appears to be a money laundering, extortion racket, and conspiracy to engage in a pattern of racketeering activity in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1951 and 1961, etc. In other words, it is an organized crime syndicate operating under false and fraudulent pretenses. As Eustace Mullins helpfully explains, and Aaron Russo's DVD America, Freedom to Fascism demonstrates the IRS is actually a private collection agency for the Federal Reserve System. It originated as the Black Hand in medieval Italy, collectors of debt by force and extortion for the ruling Italian mob families. All personnel income taxes collected by the IRS are required by law to be deposited in the nearest Federal Reserve Bank. Okay.
That's it. Now, oversight can be
okay.
About debt money that
okay.
we are indicating.
Okay. Yo. Where debt money. I say, as a result, government resort to taxes. I say, as a result, government resort to taxes, direct tax, income tax, corporate tax, property tax, etc., and indirect tax, sales tax, customs duties, value-added tax, VAT, etc., as well as creating new taxes to pay the mounting interest, which gives more and more money to the banks than they loaned out, making the banking system the greatest scam on earth.
What can we hear? Now we need introduction. Me akwa first video. Now the woman say, America, yeah, Tigana Hanuma, na tax ye doors, ye tax be complaining. America. Taxes no I will be hunu ewo TV so no wa hu ahun bedwuru eno no omutua ya kenkan bibisa o wan hwehwe mu akwa akon ba bia ehye mra se aye bia IRS no kura bu no legal in America so mbejiska ezi ehunu document
bia ni osa
ya so hwe taxes a omutua the first video
na body e da so no ye a partial list of taxes Americans are forced to pay. That video no Pam Chomuma Yenhe. Wani guso a wo hwe eyadwumadi a yato di Wake Up Africa Royal Television so na we ye kwan a omofa so a wo ye adwuma ye taxi o ye gigi wu sika ne saa sika ne purugu saa kese wo fa ha ne yaje owura ha ne yaje na mo besesa na mo de ko saa na mo de ye yen over bacho me da se
enti sese de ye wura debt system amaman edidika wo Africa ha no ma ye de ye swim in an ocean of debt. Africa ya hu wakapa na so binu mu wakache. Nti e ba behwe the next pictures set of pictures are dealing with a car yedi. Next picture
here. People's Daily Graphic, 18th June 1987. Africa's external debt burden. Sa picture mu fanto so maye. Okay.
Next picture.
Weekly Spectator, 23rd September 1989. Africa's debt, causes and effects. Mufasa picture no ento so maye. Okay.
Next picture.
Daily Graphic, 11th June 2005. G8
ministers.
Okay, G8 ministers meet over Africa debt deal. Mufasa picture no ento so mfamaye. Okay.
Next picture.
The Accra Daily Mail, 6 July 2005. African leaders seek end to debt. Over sa picture no ento so mfa maye.
Omo kwa akosre se yemfa eka Africa de ni nyina nche.
Yo.
So anya adwuma. Next say entiase. Ya boy akwa akoto debt money system. Ba yenim
na de ban.
Yenim na de ban.
Ti di akire sa.
To aso ne komami.
Public agenda. 10th October 2011. Focus on the global debt situation. Borrowing has been the answer to all economic troubles in the past years. Now debt itself has become the problem, says Philip Kogan. Mufasa picture nento so mfa maye.
And this say global there. Na ye hwe we ya. Yenko hwe second video. America deka. America total debt no 36 trillion US dollars.
Yo.
And what debt bomb
so. And one of our kind of video at was on America's 36 trillion US dollars debt bomb. Mufasa sa picture mo maye video no mo.
Our next story is about America, specifically America's debt. It stands at $36 trillion. That's the debt, $36 trillion. That's what the US government owes. 36 trillion. It's a ticking time bomb. And according to the IMF, it is ticking louder than ever. The IMF, as you know, is the International Monetary Fund. It has issued a direct warning. The US must get a grip on its ever-increasing debt. Those are the words of Geeta Gopinath, the Deputy Managing Director of the IMF, and her warning comes at a critical time for the United States. Just recently, they suffered a downgrade. Ratings agency Moody's has downgraded American debt. Earlier, the US had a credit rating of AAA. That's the gold standard, AAA. Now they've been downgraded to AA1. And the reasons are the same: soaring government debt, rising interest payments, and government spending without any checks. Like I said before, the US owes $36 trillion. That number is rising fast. And instead of hitting the brakes, the US is pressing the accelerator. President Donald Trump wants sweeping tax cuts. He is pushing a new bill, a bill that is more than 1,000 pages long. It is called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. That is the official name. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act. It's so Trump. It proposes a wide range of cuts to income tax. Economists say that this would widen the deficit. This bill would decrease government revenue substantially by as much as over $4 trillion. This is projected over a period of 9 years, and the markets have already reacted to this. Stocks have dropped, so has the value of the US dollar dropped. This was during early trading today. In fact, throughout this week, the markets have been wobbly. Investors are nervous, not because of wars, not because of another pandemic, but because of America's own balance sheet. The rising debt is the biggest cause of concern. It entails the growing cost of servicing that debt. Higher interest rates mean higher payments. Right now, the US is borrowing money just to pay the interest. Needless to say, this is not sustainable. Some experts say it's worse than it looks. Billionaire investor Ray Dalio paints a grim picture. He was among the few who had warned about the crash in 2008. And now Ray Dalio is concerned about America's rising debt. He says the credit ratings only tell one part of the story. The real danger is the falling value of the dollar. It had a rough start in 2025, and in the last 5 months, the dollar's value has fallen by over 7%. If this trend continues, investors would suffer more losses, particularly those who bought US government bonds. Their returns would shrink. And the US is not the only one here. Across the board, debt levels are rising. Back in April, the IMF had raised red flags about this as well. It said global debt is heading for dangerous levels. In fact, the IMF expects public borrowing to jump further. And if this trend continues, listen to this, if this continues, the world's debt pile would be bigger than the world economy by 2030. That is worse than the pandemic, far worse than the 2008 financial crisis. So the IMF wants countries to focus on reforms and reduce debt.
We want to see countries acting decisively on reforms so you don't borrow your way out of debt. You grow your way out of debt. So when countries have that growth potential enhanced, then they can also reduce that vulnerability.
So which countries are vulnerable? There's the US, of course. Its debt levels stand at 123% of its GDP, but some countries are doing worse than the US. Japan is at a whopping 235% of its GDP. That is the debt level, 235% of their GDP. Singapore, 175% of the GDP. Greece, 142%. Bahrain, 141%. And Italy's debt stands at 137% of its GDP. So Japan's debt levels as a percentage of their GDP are far worse than the United States. But there's a basic difference. The US issues the world's reserve currency, the dollar. When the dollar weakens, the world feels the impact. A weak dollar means higher prices, higher risk for global markets, and less confidence for in the US leadership. The consequences are not theoretical. They're already showing, with ratings downgrades, market volatility, and growing global unease.
Sabi when you so a share aye dwumadi a yato ne din Wake Up Africa Royal Television so na meyam crash me adentia isanse ye kire aman ka omode na gese ye se wiase no obi adeka na ohwe video ya ye hwe na ne ba madwene mu ye hwe eskafo kakra na hihye sa dwumadi no ti se no omato wiase omato bia isanse ohwe America ka ode na obia yes America man no matter obia nti no mo frɛ citizens no aya mo nkɔ hwehwɛ de nti aye frɛ oman ba bia citizen mo behu de nti etisa over mbate omaba
that's it yentua your pictures the next picture because you're dealing with the debt money system any Africa kai
hey nyoma ye ni Daily Graphic 9th May 2018 IMF worried over rising debt in sub-Saharan Africa. If I saw that picture, I'm going to show you my yenhwe. Mobo. Hey. Yo.
Next picture.
Next picture no BFT 28th June 2018. The anatomy of global debt. Mufasa picture no to show you my
Next picture.
Next picture here, Daily Graphic, 13th May 2025. Hey, where the high President Mahama calls for unity to tackle Africa's debt crisis. But Mufasa picture not to some for my.
One one as in bears and wine Togo.
Yo.
Young Queen.
Yeah, ni mo no aye corner trilateralism. Trilateralism. The Trilateral Commission and Elite Planning for World Management, edited by Hollis Clark, page 28 overview. Move us up picture no to some for my. Yeah. Okay.
Obekai.
That's so.
Obekai bibi or hunting.
Yo. Over much of me wana. Any. Okay. Yeah.
Page 28. Overview. Say 27.
Okay. Yo. Officer say 27. Page 27 overview.
The other one be a horn, my no say ba.
Over and then say
you know the overkind debt we na senkeba. Nti kan no
okay
ye be sako eho ye be sa bebi
ni ofadema me no bebi o mark ne ye debt dependency is one of the neo-colonial leashes around a third world country's neck. The leash is let out to allow Western directed development projects to gallop ahead, returning enormous profits to foreign corporations and banks. Or the debt leash can be pulled in tight, as part of an economic and political destabilization campaign to strangle a rebellious nation into submission. Hey. Destabilization is the dominant system's cure for any government which threatens the economic freedom of international business as it becomes more responsive to the needs of its people. And the global doctors know just how painful their cure can be. It kills the body to save the cancer. The overthrow of Chile's democratically elected government is a case in point. Of Ambacho Mewi.
Sasa na tie dia waka we awie die ntia ya ma man bia boka abeye ade ade asen yeku enti say omba okrom na se still I person boka na person mpene so nya ya ne amiem because person benye sika wo umanu ye de akọ ntia nu nti yanko he next video, which is the third one. Third one is to say,
the essence of foreign aid is to control the management and indebtedness of developing countries.
Important is the economic structures. After colonization ended, we needed new structures to keep these countries where they were. Okay? And the first of those is aid. Okay? We give them aid. Aid for what? Actually, we give them aid to keep repressive regimes in power. That's all. Okay? We're not giving them aid for much more except a little bit of infrastructure to make sure those raw materials get to the ports and aren't gotten out of the ground. But for the most part, we give repressive regimes money and power and guns to keep that system going. This is what it's fundamentally about. All the hypocrisy about transparency and democracy and bullshit like that, it's all bullshit. You know? And at least the Chinese don't enter into that bullshit. They say, we don't care about the whole political environment, we just give the money. Okay? And it's for raw material extraction, period. Okay? Number two, and this was a very important one, still is debt. I was telling some of my students today, was it today or yesterday, about Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Do you remember this? Have any of you heard of this one? Confessions of an Economic Hitman. It's a book written by John Perkins, who used to work for a very nebulous, opaque bank. No one had ever heard of this bank, but it was formed in the 1950s by the IMF, the CIA, and the American State Department. And it had only one job: to lend money to developing countries that were raw material producers in order to indebt them. Once you are in my debt, I control you. Okay? And this bank had 4,000 employees, but no one ever heard of this bank, you see. But it would go to country after country offering loans. And if the president did not accept the loan, they were killed. And he gives two examples of presidents who were killed when they did not accept the loan. You see, the lending is also very important to trap the country. It's very important. It's part of that process. I teach in Suriname. And Suriname in recent times had a huge foreign exchange reserve. So big they didn't need to borrow money. And then one of my students who was very high up in government, he said, you know, the IMF is trying to convince us to borrow money from foreigners. Why? I thought, duh, you know, sorry about this, but, you know, this is the game. And in the end, Suriname did borrow this money because the IMF said, if foreigners lend to you, then everyone will think Suriname is such a strong economy that foreigners are interested in lending to you. You understand? Before Lula came to power, you know, the previous president in Brazil, Cardoso, his predecessor, took a gigantic international loan. No necessity for taking the loan. Why? Because once I catch you with the debt strings, I hold you forever. You are my prisoner. Okay, so debt has been this huge spider's web which has trapped sub-Saharan Africa and keeps them held there. Aid, debt. We have a third structure which is again not known by many people, but it's something that was put in place and continues to this very day, with no one discussing it. No one says anything about it. It is monopoly buying structures. This is for all raw materials and basic agricultural goods produced by developing countries. There are only 4 or 5 Western multinationals that buy all those goods. And they collude between them. So if you take any major product, these Western multinationals, they collude between them. Even if we go down to banana production, we had a PhD done here at the ISS, and the person showed that the 4 or 5 major multinationals, they collude, and in order to make sure their control is total, what they do is they force all the producers to produce the same uniform banana. You know, the crap you buy in the West and has no taste at all. You go to any developing country, you know how a banana tastes, don't you? There's so many of them, lots of varieties, but we only market 1 or 2 types, so we have control, you see. If you don't produce at the price I want you to produce, I go to the next country. You see, we get control. So these buyers, they impose that control, and they keep pushing the prices down and down and down. Okay, this is the game. No one says anything about it. There are no commissions of inquiry to say this is illegal what you're doing. The WTO has nothing to say about this. But sorry to say, you know, if banana prices rose 10 times, especially for people like me.
Sabri Ubusa o share Wake Up Africa. Jumedie e Royal Television so. Abusa maboto pa o na mere aho. We enye obi akeke na kasa no. Oye lecturer kuni nipa broni a o kire school fu ade. We abrofo university a ye kire o made. Ena ye kire o mo kwan a ya o mafa so a o mo de Africa nam so. Sebe ya Africa ye pew yempew ohia ene aho kire de ye be fam enti de enti a debt money system yi abese ye kon na nu nti ye raw materials ye mo companies ahodo 5 a omo ye was multinational corporations a omo nyina fi west ho abrofo ne dia enti no omo no mo hye price ema Africa ha de hey all raw materials bi o say even kwadu kro omo no mo hye price eji asa yan de areho na emobo na mebisa wo say ye ye lectures ye professors no enti we munim and education system na na mu no muguso adi akire and economy o na ye tese areho abusiafo areho over
yo Kofi na abakaye a video na ehwe no ono bisa omo di nkomo no say what economic hitman John Perkins throw book bi na bank no okoye adwuma ho a wo mu nam a wo mu bobisia no nebulous bank hidden obi antimi mu ba bi efi enso wo mu 4,500 employees oba de ncha de economic hitman ye wo hu nsem bebri next picture.
Your next picture no confessing of an economic hit. No, sorry. Next picture. Next picture here. New African, October 2005. Confessing of an economic hitman, page 46. Okay, wait. Okay. Of a mayen.
And you be kind and a dazzle.
You, Pastor, the kind of dasono. Confessing of an economic hitman. This is a true story as told by John Perkins in his new book, Confessions of Economic Hitman. What is an economic hitman? Perkins, who was an economic hitman himself, says an economic hitman is a person recruited and trained by the American intelligence community, NSA, and CIA, particularly, and employed by private corporations to go around the world and encourage world leaders to become part of a vast network that promotes U.S. commercial interest. In the end, those leaders become ensnared in a web of debt that ensures their loyalty to the U.S. We can draw on them whenever we desire to satisfy our political, economic, and military needs. For Africa, there is a huge lesson here to learn. This is an extraordinary story and a book that every African must read. John Perkins writes.
Next picture.
Next picture, New African, October 2005, Confessing of an Economic Hitman, page 47. Okay. And that's na kind of. Economic hitmen are highly paid professionals who cheat countries around the globe out of trillions of dollars. They funnel money from the World Bank, the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, and other foreign aid organizations into the coffers of huge corporations and the pockets of a few wealthy families who control the planet's natural resources. Their tools include fraudulent financial reports, rigged elections, rigged elections, payoffs, extortion, sex, and murder. They play a game as old as empire, but one that has taken on new and terrifying dimensions during this time of globalization. I should know I was an economic hitman. I wrote that in Okay. Of I said
next picture.
Okay. Next picture no cover of book John Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Mufasa picture no ento so mfama. Okay.
The book no ni
yo
copy ni kura me a
mefa enchire ofa book nankasa no da so no eno a ofa de ba ha eno a ene kura me aha ena me di chire an economic hitman book no eno nie
it is a sanity there. Next picture
no John Perkins, Confessing of an Economic Hitman, page 20.
Huh?
Sorry, page X. Okay, page SXI. Okay.
And the Obekai Ecuador.
Okay.
Now, Kaya. Now the Ghana are 2 trips. So. Because the idea Ecuador no. And one idea Ghana.
Yo.
And the Kaya Mami.
Okay. Where Ecuador is typical of countries. Ecuador is typical of countries around the world that economic hitmen have brought into the economic political fold. For every $100 of crude taken out of the Ecuadorian rainforest, the oil companies receive 75%.
$75.
Sorry. For every $100 of crude taken out of the Ecuadorian rainforest, the oil companies receive $75 of the remaining 25, 3/4 must go to paying off the foreign debt. Most of the remainder covers military and other government expenses, which leaves about $2.50 for health, education, and programs aimed at helping the poor. Thus, out of every $100 worth of oil torn from the Amazon, less than $3 goes to the people who need the money most. Those whose lives have been so adversely impacted by the dams, the drilling, the pipelines, and who are dying from lack of edible food and potable water.
Equator Assembly account. Different from Ghana.
There be offer.
Dear mommy. Then heard the next picture.
Yo. Okay.
Next picture, no, yes.
Next picture, no, and also I say John Perkins' confession of an economic hitman. And also a prefix, you know, XX2. Okay. Mofa into so my.
Into Bakai.
Okay.
We economic hitman.
Yo. Yamaki baby American. I see we economic hitmen are crafty. We learned from history. Today, we do not carry swords. We do not wear armor or clothes that sets us apart. In countries like Ecuador, Nigeria, and Indonesia, we dress like local school teachers and shop owners. In Washington and Paris, we look like government bureaucrats and bankers. We appear humble, normal. We visit project sites and stroll through impoverished villages. We profess altruism. We profess altruism. Talk with local papers about the wonderful humanitarian things we are doing. We cover the conference tables of government committees with our spreadsheets and financial projections. And we lecture at the Harvard Business School about the miracles of microeconomics of Abacho.
Next picture.
Next picture, no. Who is Dr. Kwesi Botwe? A question na obisa.
Aba.
Me bacho sa picture no mofa etuso emfa mayen. A picture na obisa asemose. Who is Dr. Kwesi Botwe? Yo, ofa edaso.
And overkai mami.
Okay, yo.
How do you know?
Yo.
That kind, baby, I'm a market.
Okay. Question obisa yene. Who is Dr. Kwesi Botwe? Afamaki baby.
Now we yenya Emra 204 Dr. Kwesi Botwe yes and Professor F flag bearer. Emma NDC.
Okay.
And the profile by and the giant here ain't
Ya chain.
baby. And the kind baby
I'm marking no.
Ma marking no.
Yo.
Yes,
But if I'm marking every day, say while serving as finance and economic minister, Dr. Kwesi Botwe was a development advisor at the Harvard Institute for International Development. He left for the Harvard Center for International Development as Director of African Programs Research in 1998, where he lectured in managing economic reform in law. I say he left for the Harvard Center for International Development as Director of African Programs Research in 1998, where he lectured in managing economic reform in low-income countries at the Kennedy School at the Harvard University of Ambacho, Mary. So the question is, who is Dr. Kwesi Botwe? Per dia John Perkins, a confession of my watchere economic hitmen the way almost there Harvard University almost
about microeconomics
it's media more fie no of I say more answer who Dr. Kwesi Botwe was, whether or economic hitman or not. I know the John Perkins.
Yeah, fourth video.
Okay. Fourth video no a confession of an economic hitman. Okay, Mufasa video no, Muma hear sa video no.
Free jump.
Hitmen work. Well, the most common way, and Dave just read a bit of that, is that we will identify a country, a third world country, that has resources that our corporations covet, like oil. And then we'll arrange a huge loan to that country from an organization like the World Bank. But this loan doesn't go to the country. Instead, it goes to U.S. corporations, Halliburton, Bechtel, Brown and Root, you know the names. Those are the ones that get the money. And they build big infrastructure projects in this country, power plants, ports, highways, industrial parks, things that benefit the very rich who are in collaboration with the corporatocracy, but they don't benefit the poor. The poor aren't connected to the power grids. They don't have the skills to get the jobs in the industrial parks. They don't own cars to drive on the highways or ships to use in the ports. The country's left holding a huge debt, so huge you can't possibly repay it. So at some time, we economic hitmen go back and say to the country, listen, you can't pay your debts, so give us a pound of flesh. Sell oil to our oil companies real cheap, or vote with us on the next critical United Nations vote, or send troops in support of ours to some place in the world like Iraq. And in that way, we've built this empire. There's a lot of other things we've done, but that's the most common and most typical one. Sometimes we fail, not very often. I failed miserably in Panama with Omar Torrijos, I personally, and in Ecuador with Jaime Roldos. And I detail this in the books, but what happens then is what we call the jackals go in. The jackals overthrow governments, as we tried to do in 2002 with Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, or they assassinate the leaders of these governments, as they did with Jaime Roldos in Ecuador and Omar Torrijos in Panama. I felt deeply guilty for that, because I particularly liked Torrijos, who I knew quite well personally, and I knew that if I failed to bring him around, the jackals were likely to step in, and they did. He died in a fiery airplane crash. I have no doubt it was a CIA orchestrated assassination done by jackals. On the few occasions when the jackals also fail, then, and only then, does the military go in. That's what happened in Iraq. To understand Iraq, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my perspective on Iraq in just a minute, but to really understand it, we first have to understand Saudi Arabia. A lot of you will remember, some of you won't. I'd like to see we get quite a generational mix here. In the early 70s, OPEC didn't like what we were doing in Israel. Same old story. And so they cut off our oil supplies. So some of you will remember these long lines at the gas stations. And we feared we were going to have another depression like the 1929 depression. And so the U.S. Treasury Department came to me and other economic hitmen and said, listen, you know, we can't allow OPEC to blackmail us anymore. You guys got to come up with a plan so this will never happen again. We knew that that plan had to involve Saudi Arabia because it had more oil than anybody else, and it also, the House of Saud, the royal family, was corrupt and corruptible. The long version is explained in the book, but the short version of what we did, the deal we finally struck with the House of Saud, was a deal whereby they would return almost all the money they made from selling oil to the United States, invested in U.S. government securities. The U.S. Treasury Department would use the interest from those securities, which over the years has amounted to trillions of dollars, to hire U.S. companies to westernize Saudi Arabia, build petrochemical complexes, desalinization plants, whole cities out of the desert, McDonald's and all the other things that go along with our Western culture. The House of Saud would also agree to keep the price of oil within limits acceptable to the oil companies, possibly not acceptable to you and me, but acceptable to the oil companies. And this is very, very important. They agree that they would never, ever sell oil for anything other than US dollars. This happened in the early 70s, right after we'd gone off the gold standard because we were bankrupt, because we could not pay off our debts to European countries in gold. Nixon took us off the gold standard. And then we were stuck with a situation as why will anybody in the world use dollars? So very shortly we came up with this plan, which in essence put the dollar on the oil standard. You cannot buy oil on the world market for anything other than dollars, and that's very important to the corporatocracy. Our part of the bargain was we agreed to keep the House of Saud in power, in control. It was an amazing deal, the deal of the century. It was history-making, incredibly powerful deal that we struck with Saudi Arabia, and it's held. It's had some what the CIA calls blowback, unintended consequences. For example, one of the things that really pisses Osama bin Laden off is those McDonald's and those desalinization plants and those petrochemical complexes surrounding Medina and Mecca, the two most sacred sites in Islam. And it pisses off a lot of other Muslims in Indonesia and all over the world. There's been some blowback, but on the whole, the corporatocracy looked at this as an incredible success. I had done my job. We economic hitmen did a great job with that one. So we decided that Saddam Hussein ought to accept something very similar. Now, probably a lot of you know that Saddam has been our boy for a very, very long time. You may remember Abdul Karim Qasim, who was president of Iraq in the early 60s. Qasim came up with a unique concept. He said, Iraqi oil ought to go to benefit the Iraqi people. How novel is that? But we didn't like that very much. He began to tax the oil companies, particularly the British and some American companies, and threatened to nationalize our oil companies. And so we decided that Qasim had to go. The CIA sent an assassination team. It was headed by a man who was still going through high school, an Iraqi citizen who was still going through high school. They riddled Qasim's car with bullets on the streets of Baghdad and missed him. The head of this assassination team was wounded and fled to Syria. His name was Saddam Hussein. He was a CIA agent in those days, an assassin for us. He failed. And so the CIA went directly, and this is all history, I'm not creating this. CIA went in and had Qasim publicly executed on Iraqi television. They put Saddam's cousin in charge. He became president of Iraq, and Saddam became vice president in charge of security. Eventually, as you know, he became president. He was our boy. He was our man. And so, and we sold him and gave him a lot of tanks. We built him, Bechtel built him big chemical, I ought to know, my father-in-law was chief architect at Bechtel, built Saddam big chemical plants that were used, and we knew that they were used to make mustard gas and other chemical weapons that were being employed against the Kurds and later the Iranians. We knew this, but we sold him these things. And in the 1980s, we decided that Saddam Hussein ought to accept something similar to Saudi Arabia, such a successful deal, because after all, what we want to do is control the Middle East and control the oil in the Middle East. And incidentally, I'm going to get back to Iraq in just a moment, and Iraq is part of that too. We have to remember that Middle Eastern oil is the oil that's used by a great deal of Europe and China and Japan. If we control Middle Eastern oil, we control our biggest potential competitors, Japan, China, Europe. So it's very important that we do that. So in the 80s, we decided that Saddam ought to accept the same sort of deal.
Royal Television, so now we John Perkins and Kasa Ena Kasano Ura no economic hitman Kasiapa na asem na okano I guess omo de ne opese o tienyan so omo ye nkrofobia ekuo bia omo dwumadi omo dia ne se ɔman bia opese odwen wo man ho ɔman bia mpanyifo a wo ye panyi obedi president na pese odwen wo man ho o manfo ho say wo de raw materials ne niema ɛwɔ ɔman ni mu no obehwe say nkrofo be benefit nkrofo be nya so mfaso na obia brabo na ye fan ama omo no ɛyɛ Europe fo abrofo kwasi kokko UN na yakɔdwen no omo nyina omo no ka ho omo mpren so omo oku a from economic hitmen nti oye sa ban no unya aba na wo niema sene a oba amampanyi bi bae o say one village one dam one way say o pese o ya o manfo yi a ne aba o nchen jumadi na pese wudi no yen pene so jato ho omo economic hitmen no first ayi beba o ha ne wa beka o pene so pe na gese o mama o offer na gese ho na asi na gese o be ye nia omo pe ni ombeka to se fa manfo ne fam no ene se o de manfo wa mpene so de a omo onkrofo bi a jackass ombeba omo no omo ba o na o se den no yese ye nia yen ye kan America pe open nti ombe se no ombe se ombekun but ebia now security tight omo ntimi ankun de a na omokọ na afei omo afa America UN sojafo se na omo de koye Gaddafi ene Saddam Hussein de nti omo ye ne sa na omo abofra omo tete no omo tete ni wie ya omo de ni besi ba bi o ye so omo de ni si no ene ono sorry ti a omo se me manfo oyo na me ye me be ma me manfo me fa mamuda ene omo se saa yo eno na omo de koye ni omo de be ye no we ni enema UN na ye de ye ho akodom no military na yesi omo na omo hwe wiase so ntokwa omo na omo ye yi no juma omo didi aman ene na yete no John Perkins ene eka ho asem nti nema economic hitmen omo de ye aman omo de bia ye Ecuador president omo kuno pa o president we say ye be you omo timi ye na omo de plane crash kwa na omo de amount yetimi maka ne aye wo car obe wie da obewu we num na omo de aye nkrofo abesi nne Ghana yegusu de bi ye yen tin ye mpanyifo no omo ba o ka ye ka den ka ye su and so still I be omo de o pese omo ye yen no anom be nyomo a ye ngo fa
enti video no conclusion no say omo kan say Saddam on top idea no am de ba no say he won't buy enti na so omo di jackass nso ko na say oh Saddam on a double look alike bebre enti no uponu akuno abebre enti omo jaye 90s and on the US troops score and kura no person beku omo ya no mu jaye 2003 and a Bush Junior there was a me mekun ekwan bia so get him omo nya no omo kan say we got him and the story no conclusion and the next picture
no edaho no Daily Graphic 15 December 2003 Saddam Hussein captured mufasa picture no to enfamaye ofanaga say UN na ye dwan ni kwa ye nim na de ban ne omudwumadi o
na omunyumanka ene say ka say be ko tia obo ade ye nim we the story no conclusion ni the John Perkins kan no ne empese e be ye ba circumstances inti ye eni nya Saddam Hussein eni eche no Saddam Hussein ene wonti asase su biem ache no
waye funu
na we nyina na baaye no emre say nya independence no broni structures no jama ye no yantimi ansesa no eno an baaye beso mu o broni wo hakra say na no ye no enti eni an ye enti entimi anye ansesema infrastructures a ebe take care of yamanfo no mo nya hoto enti so ba inherit broni dia no dia ene ye enti time dia no ye wo control ewo wo so enti ene no yanko here next picture
your next picture no trilateralism. The Trilateral Commission and Elite Planning for World Management, edited by by Holy Sklar, page 27, overview. Mufasa picture no entoso enfamaye. Ofa Kwame Nkrumah independence we am say ni 4 days or 3 days per NOD en command UN for san kwese omonsa. Hey.
Jabe obekan we aba be si neat. Na wa dwompo aba ha.
Okay.
Abekan we na no de beba be wie ha.
Papa told you.
Yentie
yo that's so na ye kind no. As it trilateralist correctly note that for the weaker developing countries, interdependence appears as a system of dependence. As they see it, their entire economy and external trade have been shaped according to priorities defined by stronger industrialized states and not by their own needs. Okay, Officer Yenjampe. How do the trilateral powers keep third world states cooperative? In the wake of World War II, old-style colonialism gave way to neocolonialism. The neocolonial state has former political independence, but in reality, its economic system and thus its political policy is directed from outside. Instead of a single colonial master, the neocolonial state may have many new masters, Western governments. Western governments, especially the US, the International Monetary Fund, banking consortiums, global corporations, Western powers have intervened repeatedly to sabotage and smash governments which challenged the tightly woven fabric of dependency. Iran, 1953, Guatemala, 1954, the Congo, now Zaire, 1960, Brazil, 1964, Dominican Republic, and Indonesia, 1965, Bolivia, 1970 to 1971, Chile, 1973, the 1961 Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba, orchestrated by the CIA and top government and military officials with President Kennedy's approval, was defeated.
Yes. Okay.
Yo.
The okay nyina the chair ni say since independence and I'm saying to me am pa any high structures amano Africa had here area nyina ba Africa had here obia development say political say economic the directive outside and wow what and why a case in point and make any structural adjustment adopted in 83 and no na be benchmark Ghana since you were democratic na next week obade me ahodia sa de kro no an de nyina yaye ye be regime bia de kasa president no buy no kan no eno ana successive presidents ni nyina be kan na chenchen ya ne ye say ye koye nimbo development. We have never been in control of whatever we have been doing. The viano ye directive free outside any ediba. And the question evidence say how independent is Africa? Next picture.
Next picture no abodini ye. Daily Graphic, 2nd July 2007. How independent are African states? Question I go bisa no mo fasa paper no and hey, baby ba no fati so maye.
Ya bibia ya directive free outside the different. Na independent na nya ye no. Emphasis ben pa na
was so.
Next picture.
Daily Graphic, 28 March 2007, bid to integrate Africa into global economy. Okay, global economy. If I chose a picture, no more fantasy. So
it is a say ya mini Africa. Ya di akwa share the center of global economy. Senti ni ekwan bia ye beka say ye dwane afrigo yakem. Next picture.
Daily Graphic, 14th April 1994. Ghana joins SWIFT network. Pacho, mufasa picture na to so for my.
Nti eno de obekran animu ha ya SWIFT ne de ba de.
Okay, yo.
Kai ma me da so.
Picture na da so. O say Ghana joins SWIFT network. Ghana has now joined the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication SWIFT, an international cooperative organization formed to effect payment by the fastest possible and most secure means through a network system.
Enti ya mini yen. Ya mini yen. Next feature.
Azemo. Daily Graphic, 29th October 1998. Globalization and the world economy. Ipacho, mufasa picture no ento so enfam mayen. Okay. Eno no ofa say yen kan ahabibi kakra e wa ha say. Okay. Ofa baby wa maki wa ye ya wa. Okay. Aha baby ofa aye the yellow no aye ho na say ofa say yen kan. Globalization and the world economy. 29th October 1998 graphic. Integration of economies worldwide through trade, financial flows, technology spillovers, information networks, and cross-cultural currents is bringing nations closer. This form of integration, however, has its advantages and disadvantages. Okay.
Next picture.
Next picture no The Spectator, 25th September 1999, integrating into the global financial system. Pacho mo fasa picture no ento so mfa mayen.
You say the Africa.
Ya many yen.
Ya many yen. Ya follow ye up. Ye ni baby ya ekopie. Next picture.
Next picture no the Plutocracy Cartel, page 4. This world is not run by the president or the prime ministers. Hey, asema basabuki. Yo, Plutocracy Cartel no, book no enya asem ketua na ofamaki baby en ye kan no. I said this world is not run by the president or the prime ministers. It is run by the global corporations and the banks, for it is these entities that control the money supply, and it is these entities that decide which country lives or falls. The Daily Bell, 2012. Okay. Next picture no abodino eye banking oligarchy, page another books a PPF. Banking oligarchy, page 6. The Welbecks, Can Leops, Goldman Sachs, and Rothschilds have intermarried into one big happy banking family. Okay.
The entire bankers na timia control we as ya besi no. Womo ware womo aho. They stand solid. All the different banking nyina no busuan baako. Enti kan Welbecks, Lopes, any woman can hold the essay.
Book na mabodin dada na baby of our market na ye kan o say the Welbecks, Can Leops, okay, Kun Leops
almost part of the creature from Jaka Island.
Okay. Goldman Sachs, Schiffs, and Rothschilds have intermarried into one big family banking family. The Welbeck family, which controls Dutch Bank and BNP, tied up with the Rothschilds in 1814 in Hamburg. While Kuhn Leop, powerhouse Jacob Schiff, shared... Mufa your friend is saying picture net to so and say yeah kind na ahwefo so enya bi enkan. Okay. While Kuhn Leop powerhouse Jacob Schiff shared quarters with Rothschilds in 1785, Schiffs immigrated to America in 1865. He joined forces with Abraham Kuhn and married Solomon Leop's daughter. Leop and Kuhn married each other's sisters, and the Kuhn-Leop dynasty was consummated. Felix Warbeck married Jacob Schiff's daughter. Hey, two Goldman daughters married two sons of the Sachs family. Hey, created Goldman Sachs. In 1806, Nathan Rothschild married the oldest daughter of Levi Barrett Cohen, a leading financier in London. Dean Henderson, in his book Big Oil and Their Bankers in the Persian Gulf.
Next picture.
Next picture, no, Aberdeen, Rothschilds, European banking family that owns the world. Pacho, Mufasa picture, no, enter so enfamaye. Yo, and that's on ye kanka krabi. Rothschilds, Jacob Rothschilds family, Shield, Nathan Rothschilds. European banking family that owns the world. When na iriaseno ikutawom. The Rothschilds control the Bank of England, the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the IMF, the World Bank, and the Bank of International Settlements. Hey. Also, they own most of the gold in the world, as well as the London Gold Exchange.
And so they
own the largest gold, which sets the price of gold every day. Gold of price. Rothschilds. It is said the family owns over half the wealth of the planet, estimated by credit seals to be 231 trillion US dollars. Petty paper Heracles, American Free Press.net.
Next picture.
Yo. Next picture here. Central banks control centers of money creation and global finance. Page 2. Mayor Amsel Rothschilds. 5 sons were sent to the major capitals of Europe. Okay. Mayor Amsel Rothschilds. 5 sons were sent to the major capitals of Europe: London, Paris, Vienna, Berlin, and Naples, with the mission of establishing a banking system that would be outside government control. The economic and political systems of nations would be controlled not by citizens but by bankers, for the benefit of bankers. Eventually, a privately owned central bank was established in nearly every country. Commercial bank. This central banking system has now gained control over the economies of the world. Central banks have the authority to print money in their respective countries, and it is from these banks that governments must borrow money to pay their debts and fund their operations. The result is a global economy in which not only industry but government itself runs on credit or debt, created by a banking monopoly headed by a network of private central banks. Andrew Gavin Marshall, Global Research of Ambacho.
Na ansani ever hear a video remain quality at the back. You can central banks now. A reference in this case, no reference to the bank, no bank, say Bank of Ghana, Bank of one, and only central banks no money control. Commercial bank now can they commercial banks.
Okay.
The answer could be a pebisia no call back. Okay. Because you won't even call Bank of Ghana.
Okay.
Bank of Ghana the only no.
Okay. So Bank of Ghana and American asset.
And how can I say?
Okay, you.
And you so we control all the central banks in the world.
The world.
In the way, Si atimi aka yehu Rothschild and man dia your next video.
Your next video near the Rothschilds banking dynasty. If I saw sa video no munjangum omaye.
Around 250 years ago, in 1760, Mayer Amschel Rothschild created the House of Rothschild that paved the way for international banking and control of the world's resources.
Money is power. Money is the only weapon that the Jew has to defend himself with.
Mayer Amschel Bauer, born in Frankfurt, Germany in 1744, was a moneylender and a goldsmith on Jew Street, whose shop had a sign out front with a red hexagram on it. Eventually, he would change his name to Rothschild, which is German for red sign. Rothschild soon learned that loaning money to governments and kings was more profitable than loaning money to private individuals. Not only were the loans bigger, but they were secured by the nation's taxes. Mayer Rothschild had 5 sons whom he trained in the skills of money creation and sent out to the major capitals of Europe to open branches of the family banking business.
You are 5 brothers. I want you each to start a banking business in a different country. One to go and open a house in Paris, one in Vienna, one in London. Choose the most important centers, so that when money is to be sent from here to London, let us say, you won't have to risk life and gold. Amschel, here in Frankfurt, will just send a letter to Nathan in London saying, pay so-and-so, and that will be offset by loans from London to Frankfurt. Understand? Yes. In your day, there will be many wars in Europe. And nations that have money to transport will come to the Rothschilds because it will be safe. Your 5 banking houses may cover Europe, but you will be one firm, one family, the Rothschilds, who work always together. That will be your power.
Just how rich and powerful is Lord Evelyn Rothschild? Historically, the Rothschild family wealth was hidden in underground vaults. The Rothschild secret financial records were never audited and never accounted for. Their family commissioned biographies give the illusion that their family fortune has dwindled, but researchers estimate their wealth at close to $500 trillion, more than half the wealth of the entire world. Besides their many castles, palace mansions, wineries, racehorses, and exotic resorts, the Rothschilds bought Reuters in the 1800s. Reuters then bought the Associated Press, which selects and delivers the same news stories to the entire world, day after day. They have controlling interest in 3 major television networks and easily avoid media attention since they own it. Until recently, they owned and operated England's Royal Mint and continue to be the gold agent for the Bank of England, which they also direct. They control the LBMA, London Bullion Market Association, where 30 to 42 million ounces of gold worth over $11 billion are traded daily. The Rothschilds earn millions weekly just on transaction fees alone. They also fix the world price of gold on a daily basis and profit from its ups and downs. Over the centuries, the Rothschilds have amassed trillions of dollars worth of gold bullion in their subterranean vaults and have cornered the world's gold supply. They own controlling interest in the world's largest oil company, Royal Dutch Shell. They operate phony charities and offshore banking services where the wealth of the black nobility and the Vatican is hidden in secret accounts at Rothschild Swiss banks, trusts, and holding companies. Although Evelyn Rothschild looks like a harmless gray-haired old man, make no mistake about it, Rothschild and his ancestors have handpicked presidents, crashed stock markets, bankrupted nations, orchestrated wars, and sponsored the mass murder and impoverishment of millions. The wealth hoarded by this one family alone could feed, clothe, and shelter every human being on Earth.
The Rothschilds is the head of the snake. Within the city of London, there is a 1 mile square that is referred to as the city. This is the headquarters of the Jewish family
papa ya
Rothschild's
yebori
bank.
din ne ma osoma wom ko Europe kwan omo fa so a omo gi Europe fa ya omo de bank sem na omo tiati wiase na obuase eye omo de enko fa ho na ofa nchechire mu kakra
enti oma jibiase eni nti na you can say Rothschild dynasty no wa na kenkan wom kura assets 200 and something trillion wom sika na betumi ahwe obi a wa asase so sa na wom ka enso so akwa akodi baby
ipaka kra
nti akodi wom nsem said that money system no a ye de ba wiase no ye wi nyina ni enti no we na ma hunu say Africa ha politicians what Africa no apparently no they don't seem to understand what goes on enti no bibi kitwa bi se proper bibi kakra hey se yenya na eko yenya eberu achi na bi yemia enka Ghana ha 4 years bi edura slogan a opposition party ni di win election ni ye hwe wasitrem na to aba enti ne se aye reforms economic reforms ye ko anim no ekosi sei
ofa ye hia desua wo say be yank ye politicians yi ba ye question sense ye bisa o mo pa nsa na ye beto aba ma
wo mu osuro we dey no akobisa enti no say ye ntimi anyina ye nanso na ye ntimi ansua de na ye ntimi ehunu say ubu o manso a enye business as usual there ubu o manso a ade friend geopolitics eso utimiti ase ekofa bible de wa hwe niema ekoso na watimi ehunu de ebeba na wantimi anye ni sa na visa de china de san business as usual my appointing me ministers my appointing me we my we obi eye womu no a womu wo appointment do do say na ti ade a womu ye na se
pania mo bokra no se womu ba ye man ye popularity anipa no wo area no na we de owodin we de ye to abama na we de na ya to abama no ye nim kese onim
nyina sunsanso ene le ehunu next picture
no the city of London sorry we de makoka video next picture no city of London Corporation the city the square mile the crown epic center of international financial capitalism of the City of London Corporation. Yo, no na ye di abeto ho no na ye kan. Ofanti yemfa nfambra. Oh, okay. Soro na City of London Corporation. Obi bisa say, na City of London the Corporation. The city, the square mile, the crown. Epic center of international financial capitalism. With the exception of a few thousand very powerful people, the entire world's population, all 7 billion of us, are trapped into a criminal debt creating banking systems that has taken hundreds of years to perfect and to come to fruition. This system results in enslavement and servitude. It creates dreadful unhappiness amongst ordinary, decent people and causes wars, debt, starvation, pollution, and environmental destruction. It feeds on greed, fear, and division. It forces people onto the corporate treadmills of mass mindless production and mass mindless consumption. It uses lies, deception, intimidation, and entrapment at all times. It is a system that is so clever and so cunning that most of the world is completely oblivious to its existence. It is a system that allows a few winners at the expense of a huge number of losers. It is a system that considers itself to be unbeatable and indestructible, and is now so arrogant that it believes it can control everything and everyone on its terms. It is a system where psychopaths and sociopaths can flourish. And without question, the center of this system, the heart of this global corporate beast, is the innocent sounding square mile known as the City of London. Justin Walker.
Hi. The woman say there were 3 city states. Woman control the center of global power. City of London here can occupy an area of 1 square mile. They are heading with the Lord Mayor. No, any 12 members rule over the City of London. City of London, a private controlled Bank of England. Rothschild for na year omudia. And Queen Elizabeth ni back King Charles pam no ba muko ya bureau first bureau and pam na duru say saa sika ni nyina no Rothschild for na etwa. The control Bank of England.
And the City of London, Hono.
City of London.
City of London is different from
the normal inner city of London.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 different things. Same time comes 3 city states. The City of London, no, a hona ubenya 1 square mile, no, Bank of England, a hona, and foreign banks, a hona, including 70 US banks. A hona wa. Womo ma debt money system no atiki please. House biem na ubenya Fleet Street newspapers publishing year ko benyina na ni nyina wo. Entina separate from London. Working Ghana can the Crown, the square mile. Crown why friend woman no enya any reference to the royalty of Great Britain. It has nothing to do with it.
I see.
It has nothing to do with it.
Buckingham Palace.
Hey, you can't crown a City of London and you.
I see.
Enti, wamuna jumano no, sikasem, we are sikasem ninano. Hona, yetuche, ediko, and yediba. Currently, no, different. It is how called Vatican.
Okay.
Vatican is a country within Rome.
Okay. Yes.
Sana America. Washington D.C. is a country within U.S. Oma flag, Oma prison, Oma prosecute. These are the 3. Now Washington, and they in charge of aviation defense, military nema,
okay,
any nema, and pemuno. The best I revisit. But uko YouTuber, uko 3 city states rule the world. Ubenya video ni ya ini nyina. Enti aka we nyina wie no mpato we video no na afi.
Yo. Video no the hono ye the City of London. Mun sa video no muma.
Like Vatican City, London's inner city is also a privately owned corporation or city-state, located right smack in the heart of Greater London. It became a sovereign state in 1694 when King William III of Orange privatized and turned the Bank of England over to the bankers. By 1812, Nathan Rothschild crashed the English stock market and scammed control of the Bank of England. Today, the city-state of London is the world's financial power center and the wealthiest square mile on the face of the earth. It houses the Rothschild-controlled Bank of England, Lloyd's of London, the London Stock Exchange, all British banks, the branch offices of 385 foreign banks, and 70 U.S. banks. It has its own courts, its own laws, its own flag, and its own police force. It's not part of Greater London or England or the British Commonwealth and pays no taxes. The city-state of London houses Fleet Street's newspaper and publishing monopolies. It is also the headquarters for worldwide English Freemasonry and headquarters for the worldwide money cartel known as the Crown. Contrary to popular belief, the Crown is not the royal family or the British monarch. The Crown is the private corporate city-state of London. It has a council of 12 members who rule the corporation under a mayor called the Lord Mayor. The Lord Mayor and his 12-member council serve as proxies or representatives who sit in for 13 of the world's wealthiest, most powerful banking families. This ring of 13 ruling families includes the Rothschild family, the Warburg family, the Oppenheimer family, and the Schiff family. These families and their descendants run the Crown Corporation of London. The Crown Corporation holds the title to worldwide Crown land in Crown colonies like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. The British Parliament and the British Prime Minister serve as a public front for the hidden power of these ruling Crown families.
Sabri video ya kwashe ye of a chirem City of London. Of a dika chire City of a City of London and another Dubai to women say America make off our na what was
Kofi me de manu besi ha
yo
oba de mo ahoden a ya to aso na su dem so aso we o decorate
and some na ya na offer air there enya me nko a abusuafo na wo fie no minim se ensam na ensam a air there papa and offer say aha no DC and ti offer ye da wase ye call ye messages ni so e pamcho mo fa line into so mayen na afi na mo ma yentie ayi we say I am Ramsia Prempe. I am Ramsia Prempe Boating, watching from Ebuakwa and show is very educative. Keep it up. When Nkrumah said the independence of Ghana is meaningless until linked up with the total liberation of Africa, K.A. Buzia and JB thought it was a joke since they were chew and poor professors. Indeed, capitalism is killing African and socialism is the way out. Hello, did you go baby? The same size now, boss. What's your message? Hello, did you go baby? Albert. Yeah, me Albert.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The firm Albert Mekasefusina.
Me bato yeti pa.
Mefa kwenye sonama bomu abaso. Ofapuku da kwa metia upa. Metia wonkache. Mse jumedie no meba swate kakra. Na mebo abaso ne jumedie amodi edebuaye. Mse waka nsemne nyina. Na sese die edishia meishia free monese. Sa John Perkins ya yese eye international year yesumano na obes spice wema wa Africa ne binwa campus no se kwabie omo madu de omeme hu se no yankasa de de hoko because the international association tinu na aba parliament in parliament meeting bi obekoso the Bosnian chairman and Commodore be a physical from Hona. There was a country director sitting in a good parliament. In Timo, yeah, Bopono, not almost and deco. Yeah, Bopo say a per se quadribution with not almost and deco. It is a crowd your mama had you, Yana, your dear. Omoni yene here. Okay. Iti ya damu asepa femu bimo. Na metro for poku da kwa say $50 no. $50 no. Ya onka ho asem de nam so a say you see bi na peja na ekofom na ekosoro na bana fe omode yi fa ya ka ho asem kakra mo
for your time no. Please, good afternoon. Hey, asemo. Obia di edika. May Yahweh help us pa okay, we wan fani din amache wona dey message e baaye. Hello, dini fa kwa ofrefi. Hello, dini fa kwa ofrefi. Otie ne ho a moma onko oba me pa cho lower o TV set no na enemy enkasa. Why are they naming people like Bill Gates, Elon Musk and others as the richest men on earth? Yo we shalom money adwuma pa wofa poku dankwa obo ade nhira wo bebre wone wabed yafo
Wake Up Africa Zulu.
Abrewana na swag.
Wake Up Africa Zulu.
Wake Up Africa Zulu. But you Ethiopia. Odini Africa. Hello.
Wake Up Africa Zulu ana.
Tie no ho mama yenko time no eni ho Kumasi branch. Okay. Mama swag ye da sepa of ate onka. Mama swag of ate onka odawase. Good afternoon, wise man. I'm watching you live at Pramso. May Yahweh give you good health, long life to continue to enlighten us. Once again, good afternoon. This is Apeu. Okay, yo. Hello. Hello, Dini Papa Afrefi. Otieno ho. Nana Bosompim Akwetia. The most problem in Africans is we don't value our own things. And we are enslaved by religion, politics, and Western cultures and education. I have now understood the reason why Akufo-Addo Ghana Beyond Aid and they decided not to go to IMF, but later went to IMF. Okay. Hello, Dini Fakwa Afrefi. Hello. Adain, what's the problem? Nice education show. Watching live from Krofrom. This is Bullet of Sika FM. Greetings to all. I really love the conversation. Okay, Bullet. Sika FM. Oh, okay. Who's Nana? Oh, okay. Hello, Udini Fakwa Frefi. Bullet.
Hello.
Nyamisha. Yes. Udini Fakwa Frefi. Okay.
Na me Casper. Je say wo hwe Ghana ne African economy na. Nkufo no sadia na mo kan omo capture ya ma say no ye di ehu ba bi enye. Because economy se wa Africa ne parliament kwen fa so epe bosia ne adia. Nkufo no omo country directors ni nyina European Union, World Bank, IMF omo nyina ye wo parliament ho. Inti conversations be a monetary issues ebe kosono omo krati ansana omo ne yesa meeting no inti ebe wi akire no na ye security nyina eda bontene enunti ama sabi amo kan ye damo ase se ye die ho a na obi ka se ye be da de ho afiri sanko aye we mu enya de betima de ho because say de omo achi ye kura wi badada
yo ye da se jaman so Israel consort okwa odibiba spectacle yi quantum spectacle we we are glaucoma mpacho enya wodia na emom wani apart from glaucoma no wani yare bia se wani prunso wani kekao ewowo any yare bia wani bia no pacho we obese we emfa nkenkan ade o saka obese da bia na ese obekenkan ade no we no apani obekenkan ade we ebeboa asa wani ni yare we no ebeboa asa wani ni yare anunti wo sha na hu se wani na yaresa no we ato ho me fe na busuan ntemfa de ntini se wo yito wa na unua bi wo fa bi papa bi a ono so wo sa yare no wafa no no so e de ase ebio ebia na wo ye obi a wo de udwumade nyina ye screen o hwe laptop ye fe ne se tablet phone so TV so pa we eboa o radiation na abomodin na heal fine anunti be bia o Ghana afanya bia no o fe number we 0244 888 0244 888 onsa ebeka sa spectacle yibi sa nso obetimi afre 0206 0206519335 eno so spectacle ya no onsa ebetumi akabi abubusia aha na brebe ma yakwan me yedi dwumadi ni nyina abawie ye opanyi amene ni di dwuma ye wofa ya opoku dankwa our executive director Edema EcoFN Freedom Mind Movement. Me am di dwumadi mu chia me din ene Kofi Kumi. Ba bibia obi hia me bia no. Ofra me a beje wo so. Obo ade de dum yen adasene akramu ebese hia.
Have you heard that Chakwama Biano? A Christopher Hotel for an answer a summa woman hotel for Ebenya de Aquacudi ho. An answer a ding and a walk.